Okay, let's jump right into this explainer and completely deconstruct the unbelievable true story behind the world's most recognizable shoe brand. I mean, we see that iconic checkmark literally everywhere, right? On courts, tracks, city streets, all over the globe. But how did it actually get there? Well, the true story is honestly way more chaotic and precarious than you might think.
So, picture this. Set the scene with me. It is 1975, and Phil Knight is sitting across from a bank loan officer. He's facing a crushing, absolutely massive $1 million debt that threatens to pull the plug on his company's credit line. He is literally watching his entire company's future get decided by a stranger holding a calculator. The bank is losing patience, and the business, well, on paper, it looks like it's circling the drain.
You know, our brains are kind of wired to expect a very specific type of business fairy tale, that classic garage to billions overnight viral success. But the actual origin here? Yeah, it's not a shiny movie montage. It's a desperate man mortgaging his family home, the exact place his wife and kids sleep at night, and teaching university accounting courses on the side just to survive and feed his family. He hadn't even taken a salary in years. It's really just a story of a guy refusing to let an idea die when literally everyone else had stopped believing in it. Let's rewind a bit and map out this grueling journey. For decades, they lived on the absolute edge of collapse with zero safety net. We're talking going from a $500 handshake back in 1964 through an incredibly risky pivot in 1971, right up to that $1 million breaking point in 1975. Let's be real. Quitting would have been the easy, sensible thing to do here. So, how did this timeline actually kick off? Well, with just $500. It all started in 1964 when a middle-distance runner named Phil Knight and his relentless University of Oregon track coach, Bill Bowerman, each chipped in just $500 to form a company called Blue Ribbon Sports. This wasn't some massive venture capital raise or a hefty bank loan. Just two guys, one serious obsession with lighter footwear, and $500 apiece. And their fragile beginnings? They literally looked like this. Phil Knight driving his Plymouth station wagon up and down the West Coast, popping the trunk, and selling imported Japanese running shoes directly to fellow runners at track meets. Cash flow was an absolute nightmare for them. Their whole growth model depended on ordering way more shoes than they could actually pay for up front, and then frantically scrambling to sell them at these track meets before the bills came due. Talk about stressful.
That fragility leads us directly into our next phase, the pivot, breaking away. By 1971, tensions over territory and control with their Japanese manufacturer, Onitsuka Tiger, really forced them to make a terrifying but absolutely necessary leap. Knight realizes that building his empire on someone else's name is a ceiling he is never going to break through. Needing their own identity, Knight hires a Portland State graphic design student named Carolyn Davidson. He pays her a meager $35 for a simple, swooping checkmark meant to suggest motion and speed. $35. That little sketch became the swoosh, which is now one of the most valuable logos in the history of commerce. And they named themselves Nike. It was an audaciously confident bet on victory for a company that was actively hemorrhaging money and drowning in supplier disputes. Financially, it was terrifying. But for the very first time, they were building their own identity from the ground up instead of just reselling somebody else's shoe. They finally had something no competitor could ever take away from them.
Let's move ahead to the 1980s. Band shoes and waffle soles, the audacity to innovate.
This era was really defined by obsessive tinkering, like Bowerman famously inventing their legendary tread by literally pouring rubber directly into his wife's waffle iron. But while Bowerman innovated the sole, Knight and the marketing team innovated the story. So what happens when you lean into controversy instead of running from it? Well, Nike answers that question in 1984 by betting everything on athletes as storytellers, specifically an unproven basketball rookie named Michael Jordan. Building an entire shoe line around him was a genuinely risky move at the time.
And that risk immediately hit a brick wall. When the NBA banned the black and red Air Jordans for violating the uniform code, most companies would have pulled the shoe at the very first fine, right? But Nike? No way. They didn't pull the shoe. They paid the fines and leaned directly into the controversy. They turned quote-unquote banned sneakers into the absolute most desired basketball shoes on the planet.
By 1988, they distilled this fearless philosophy into 3 simple words. Words that weren't about product features, but about refusing to let fear keep you on the sidelines. Just do it. It became an absolute cultural force, moving the company far, far beyond its scrappy station wagon origins.
But hey, we have to look at the complete picture here. The sweatshop scandal, a harsh reality. In the 1990s, their rapid global expansion collided with a serious ethical crisis. The documented realities of overseas factory labor severely damaged the brand. As you can see, workers face poor compensation, extremely long shifts, and unsafe working environments. This wasn't a clean climb to the top, folks. It was a severe ethical misstep that hurt real people.
Now, what truly matters in the long run is what came next. Rather than burying the issue, the company had to do the really slow, unglamorous work of owning the mistake. They committed to years of reform, established strict new labor standards, implemented rigorous factory audits, and slowly began to rebuild that credibility. It wasn't fast, and it certainly wasn't easy, but they chose accountability.
Now that we've seen the massive highs and the devastating lows, let's distill what we can actually learn. Lessons under the swoosh, takeaways from the Odyssey.
The quiet truth beneath this massive empire is pretty clear. Persist through near bankruptcy when everyone else folds. Bet on the believers before the proof even exists, and take those calculated risks that others are terrified of. Build your own identity and, this is absolutely crucial, when you make mistakes that hurt people, own them and do the hard work to make it right.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. None of this happens if two guys don't put $500 each into an idea that nobody else believed in yet. The lesson here was never really about shoes. Since the biggest leaps always start with the shakiest first steps, what will you start today, even if the world hasn't given you permission yet? Think on that for a bit. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.